Aye.
Ian?
I didn't do it anyway.
Ready to go?
All right. Ready? Ready?
Everybody's ready.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Portsmouth School Committee meeting of Tuesday, March 23rd. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for our troops in harm's way, and the flag is in the back of the room here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we had an executive session prior to this. No votes were taken. We did recess executive session, so we will not seal the minutes yet. We will do that in public at our next committee meeting. Please let the roll call reflect that all committee members are present tonight, either in person with Karen McDade joining us virtually. If there is an emergency for those people who are here in the Portsmouth High School Library, we will exit the building and meet over at the new gym. So for the chair's update tonight, I just have the RIAS, Rhode Island Association of School Committee meetings, had a meeting with the Commissioner of Education on Friday, March 19th. Actually covered a lot of interesting updates. The first item dealt with testing. And as Superintendent Kenworthy has already mentioned in his reports, they will be doing the RICAS test, the idea being to really document the progress or the lack of progress this year. And districts need to really get even children who are remote learners, they need to find ways to get the kids to come in to take the tests. But obviously, there's not an emphasis on accountability this year because of COVID. There was discussion about student staff vaccines. Portsmouth had a vaccination clinic for school staff, teachers last Wednesday. So saw a lot of Portsmouth faces there from the schools as well as the private schools, and daycares were there. Kudos to the town and Ray Perry in particular for organizing those clinics. There was an update on the LEAP task force. And basically, if anybody's interested in the full kind of update there, they have a RIDE YouTube channel. It's all on the YouTube channel there. Full in-person learning update. There was a lot of discussion among the school committees about how they moved the CDC guidelines to 3 feet, but there was still concern with the buses. But I gather Superintendent Kenworthy is probably going to talk about that.
I will have an update, yes.
I'm not going to go into that discussion. And then they also mentioned the money coming in from the CARES Act 2. And that the federal guidelines will have that restricted, or a lot of it will be tied to addressing learning loss. With the American Rescue Act, they had certain percentages linked to reopening technology, summer school, addressing learning act. So obviously the money coming from the federal government, while appreciated, has a lot of strings attached to that. And then they gave the FY 2022 budget update So how things were looking at the State House. They are flat funding categorical funding. That was one of the things that we were really hoping they were going to increase. At least Portsmouth School District was hoping they were going to increase that. As of right now, they fully funded the funding formula, but they're worried that, that might not hold. So if you talk to your legislators, we'll probably want to push for that. And there was also concern about the numbers being used for the funding formula because of students who might have homeschooled this year, or they might not have applied for free and reduced lunch. So again, there was real hope that the legislature would hold district harmless for those reduction in numbers, but that remains to be seen. So that was the pretty much the RightCast meeting update. The second thing on the chair's report is a legislative update, and the field trip funding bill that we were pushing for a year ago has now passed the House. So thank you to Representative McGaugh and Court Friend who reached out to make sure that this is what the committees wanted and let us know that that was actually passed. So now it goes on to the Senate. So that was good news. At least one of our legislative priorities look like it's moving along. That's all I have for the chair's report, unless there are any questions. No, seeing none. Moving on to subcommittee updates, Capital Subcommittee, Mr. Shears.
Okay, thank you. The Capital Spending Subcommittee met on the 16th, and our discussion really centered around that there's a new law, relatively new, several years ago, that for the 2022 budget, there has to be a minimum of 2.5% of the school budget expended towards various building situations, things related to roofs and whatnot, the physical plant. And looking at what we have allocated to come up to that 1,150,000, we were somewhat short. We have to, why it's important is that if we don't hit that mark, then it throws off our reimbursement from the state in other areas. So they've made it, they put this in so that the systems would circulate their monies back into various areas within the physical plants. So we looked at and thought for getting the most bang for our buck was addressing some of the roof over at the high school. And there's 4 sections that still have not been resurfaced. And 3 of them really are all in one area, which is really this library section, the film department, art department, this section. And with the allocation for that, we looked at that adding these, what we call 3 areas, would come to $491,000 for this area. And just to let everybody know, in the 2023 budget, we will have to expend 3%, but for the 2022, the way that the regulation is that it's 2.5%, and so that's 1,150,000. And I just wanted to bring out that with the four buildings that we have in our school system and in the administration building, we have 450,000 roughly square feet, and at a replacement value of $650 a square foot, that's $292,955,000. And where I'm going with this, if you take even 1% of that, putting back into those improvements, that comes to around 3 million a year. So even with what we're talking right now, we're keeping it, we're doing a real slim activity on this of doing it, trying to get the most for our invested dollars. And I was wondering, Mr. DeLauro, is there anything that you would like to add or embellish upon in regards to what we discussed in the meeting?
No, I think, Mr. Shears, you hit it. We do have a business item for the capital budget, so I might go into a little more detail around those requirements at that point.
Okay, all right, fine. And on our subcommittee, we have Karen McDade, and we have Mr. Ferber that sits next to me here on the committee, besides naturally always having the superintendent attending. And so we figured that this was really getting the most dollars for investment of things, and we've been prudently working on this. So that's what was really taking up our time with the meeting.
Did the subcommittee vote to approve the capital budget?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Moving on to finance subcommittee.
Right, so
Mr.
the
Ferber?
finance subcommittee met on the 17th of the month, interrupting my St. Patrick's Day. And so we took our final look at the respective revenues and expenditures for the upcoming fiscal year. And we firmed up what those should be to present to the town council. So there were two votes taken at that meeting. One was for the approval of the operating budget for submission to the full school committee tonight. And then secondly, we concurred with the approval of the capital budget provided by the capital subcommittee on March 16th. And that was it. Both of those votes were unanimous.
Great,
And you'll see the explanation of the budget shortly.
thank you. Thank you very much. Health and Wellness Subcommittee, Mr. Payero.
Thank you. The Health and Wellness Subcommittee met on Thursday, Thursday the 18th. We took St. Patty's Day into account, Fred. But we, to just have some highlights, we had a lot of updates, but just to highlight some of the district-wide, we received updates from all the schools about their Wellness Week activities, about how the schools are collaborating for the high school's food drive, about outdoor classroom activities that are happening at both of the elementary schools. And Liz Alvarez gave us a phenomenal update about our testing protocols that are happening, and also the vaccination and plans that are happening, activities that are happening in the district, events-wise. And I'm sure that the high school liaisons are going to, but the blood drive is on the 30th down the block from the high school at St. John's Lodge. And then we also reviewed some of the policy updates that came to us from our initial submission of the health and wellness policy to the policy subcommittee. And we did go over them. We are going to institute some of them where it can be that didn't interfere with state law. And then we will introduce those changes to the entire health and wellness subcommittee at our next meeting of the and final meeting of the school year on May 20th, and then hopefully pass them off again to the policy subcommittee and once they are approved.
Great, thank you very much. Safety Committee met, and Mr. Shears, you're our representative on that.
Okay. The Safety Committee met on the 18th. It's for the public, it's comprised of various let's say, first responders, all the various people in the town, the administration and others concerned about the overall safety of issues. And most of the items naturally are things we can't really discuss what we're doing, but I want to let people know that we have meetings and they're quite often on it, so that we're concerned with the matter. And with COVID going on, we haven't forgotten about the other issues, important issues that we're responsible for. One thing I can that's public is the cameras that the town council has voted to put in, the speed cameras and whatnot over on the West Main Road across from Melville School. So that was discussed a little, and it was thought by all that that was a good item as far as controlling the speed and more security related to that, to the school that's right there in that area. So that was things that I can discuss, but just want to rest assured that we are actively looking and always trying to better our safety for everybody that's associated with the town.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now moving on to one of the most enjoyable and fun things that we do, recognizing accomplishments. Dr. Kenworthy.
Hey, Dr. Copeland. So for recognitions this evening, we wanted to recognize our boys basketball team for 2 years in a row now, being crowned as Division II state champions. So hopefully we have some of those student athletes and their parents on this evening. I know I saw Mr. Tresvant and Coach Ochi. But it's quite an accomplishment. Earlier this year, you may remember we recognized Coach Ochi for being named Coach of the Year for basketball last year. That was because although the season abruptly came to an end due to COVID hitting right around that time last year, when all was said and done, our boys basketball team were the Division II state champions last year. They followed that up this year with another impressive regular season, and then were able to get in a full round of playoffs this year. And through those playoffs, once again, they are the reigning Division II state champions. So we wanted to recognize students and coaches this evening. We do have certificates that will be mailed out, and they will be going to the following student athletes: Jake Balawa, Sam Balawa, Jeffrey Brady, Luke Brennan, Timothy Klopek, Jack Downing, Marcus Evans, Owen Gugliotta, Benjamin Hurd, Luke Hyder, Calvin Lucenti, Andrew Perry, Neil Tulson, and Vincent Zhang. And additionally, our coaches will also receive the recognition, and that is, again, head coach Joe Ochi, assistant coaches Mario Ochi and Michael Brennan, and our athletic trainer who helps out with all of our teams, Jake Towers. So congratulations to all of those individuals. Coach Ochi, if he's still on, Steve, did you want to make any comments? We're going to unmute you here in a second.
Okay. Are you there? I'm here.
You are here.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to thank you for everything, to acknowledge all the players, especially and the coaches. And as you're aware of what one of our other coaches is going through up in the hospital. So
Thoughts, definitely.
it's been a great couple of years, and some of our players have fortunately or unfortunately said to the press that they want to go for 3 in a row. So
Pressure.
Good.
good kind of pressure.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's really
congrats,
an
yeah.
awesome accomplishment. And you all and the student athletes do the district proud. That's wonderful.
Thank you. It's a great group of kids. A lot to be proud of with this group.
Clearly. Okay. Moving and you're mailing out the certificates.
They will
is
be
that what you're
mailed,
doing?
yes.
Okay. Moving on to public comment. If anybody virtually would like to just raise their hand, or we can now, Ms. Vanessa, I can't tell if that's a hand raised or, yeah, we're just a
wave.
wave.
Reactions.
Okay, not seeing anybody wanting to make a public comment. Moving on to our PHS liaisons communication. I see that Ms. Sullivan and Ms. Pardo de Zela are on, so we can unmute them.
So currently at the high school, we're in the midst of getting ready for Spirit Week. We pushed it to later so that we could do COVID protocols and everything along those lines. We've luckily been able to keep most of our fun Spirit Week activities to keep some joy in school while making them up on the 30th. And that's about all.
I think we just lost you. You're now muted. We're going to have to unmute you again. Can we unmute her?
He's trying.
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me
Yep.
better? Okay. So did you hear me talk about Spirit Week?
Fun activities. You were able to keep most of them, and then we lost you.
After that, I just said that on the 30th, we are hosting a blood drive. We've been doing very well in all of our blood drives, and that is on the 30th. And that is all really Student Council has been working on for recently.
Great. Thank you. I don't actually see Ms. So, okay, no Raiden tonight. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming and reporting back. Moving on to superintendent's update. Superintendent Kenworthy.
Thank you again. Good evening, everyone. So first up for my updates is always a personnel update on any new hires that we welcome to the district. So I have a new hire on our staff side, and that is Christy Mataronis, who was hired as an RBT paraprofessional at Portsmouth Middle School. And then we also finished up the last of our season 3. I'll have a quick update on that in a minute as well. Coaching hires. So I wanted to officially welcome to round out our football coaching staff at the high school, Ryan McDonald, Keith McDonald, Matthew McKinnon, Brad Kelly, Mark Mello, and David Hickey. And then for the middle school, the last of their hires for season 3 are for girls soccer, Richard Begna, and cross country assistant coach Ellen Shilabata. So congratulations and welcome to all those individuals. So for the district updates this evening, first I wanted to acknowledge at our last professional development day last week on Monday, March 15th, all members of the Portsmouth School District staff. And when I say this for these sessions, it does include all members, administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals, custodians. When we have these sessions, everyone participates. So we had our 3rd Racial Equity and Social Justice Professional Development training for this year. It's a 4-part series that we've committed to. So we'll finish up with our final session in May. And we're definitely collecting feedback from staff ongoing throughout the year and looking to see how this will shape any directions that we want to move in with this work in the future. Also, last week I shared that the Portsmouth School District, in collaboration with Lifespan, is able to offer a youth mental health first aid training for parents. So this is something that we do several times a year for staff. I have participated, as are most of our staff at this point, either this year or in past years. The program takes place in 2 parts this year. So there's one self-paced portion that people would finish up on their own, and then one live Zoom session. Information can be found under district updates on our PSD website, and the program is free to participating parents. So it is definitely something that you want to check out. I know it's helped me tremendously, both as an educator and as a parent, for any tips that we can get in this day and age. Last week, I wanted to update everyone that I was able to participate in a conference call with all Rhode Island superintendents with our new governor, Dan McKee. It was a great initial conversation between his first official conversation as governor with the Rhode Island Superintendents Association. I know we're all looking forward to the leadership of Governor McKee, and particularly now as all districts are focusing on what will hopefully be our transition out of the pandemic into what education will bring for the rest of this year and into next year and future years. At our last school committee meeting on March 9th, the school committee did approve our school calendar for next year. We have one final decision to make for next year, and that is in regards to weather emergency days. So we do have a snow day survey out that's been out for almost 2 weeks. It's going to close tomorrow. We sent one final reminder today, but if anybody would like to contribute to that, again, that will wrap up tomorrow. So far, I can tell you, as of earlier this afternoon, last I checked, we have had over 600 responses, and it is a virtual tie. Every time I look, I joke to people, they're running neck and neck literally every time I look, and one moment, it's either the option of eliminating snow days altogether and just continuing with distance learning days so we don't have to make the days up, to having just a certain number of days that we reserve for snow days at the end of the year before we move on to distance learning days. So those are definitely running neck and neck, and we'll see how that wraps up tomorrow. What I plan to do for the next school committee meeting is just give a brief update. I'll show the results of that survey, and then we can make a final decision on that. Dr. Copeland.
So one of the things that came up on social media was, can it be differentiated for grades, like keep elementary school snow days, but allow high schoolers to go virtual? And my thought was that wouldn't, but that doesn't seem like a viable thing because of teaching contracts and all that. Would it?
Definitely gets into some tricky areas, that being one of them. The other is how RIDE would recognize and count the day, but it's something I can look into. Okay. We did give those, those were the two main options, but we did give the ability for other options. So people have come up with other creative ideas there. It's been interesting. So as I mentioned, we have fully wrapped up season 2 for our athletic programs. We're going to have 4 seasons this year. That is how the Interscholastic League is attempting to get in all sports this year, 4 abbreviated seasons. So we have fully transitioned into season 3, which includes, we heard an update last meeting from Mr. Tresvant, football, girls volleyball, and cheerleading at Portsmouth High School, and at the middle school, boys and girls soccer, as well as cross country. One thing that I did want to add that came up since the last meeting is that the Rhode Island Interscholastic League, in coordination with the Rhode Island Department of Health, will be relaxing the restrictions on spectators that were in place for season 2. So for season 3, at least, we know that we can allow spectators. So both the high school and middle school will be allowing a limited number of spectators per family for each season 3 athletes. That's how we do have to have certain controls based on capacity right now, and that's what we will be doing. But the good news is there will be ability for spectators within the families of athletes for season 3. Dr. Copeland mentioned our vaccine clinic last week, so I did want to report that we had over 120 PSD staff members participate in the municipal vaccine clinic that we were able to set up last week. These individuals will have their second and final dose in a few weeks. Thank you again to town and state officials who helped provide this opportunity for our staff. That number is in addition to many other staff members that I know who are able to secure appointments through local pharmacies and state-run sites. So that should really be the last of any staff who are not able to do that for us. So with that, one thing that we can know is that the majority of our staff, we anticipate, will be fully vaccinated by April break, which brings me to my final announcement this evening. And I just wanted to point out, as I was preparing this announcement, it struck me, and I did look this up. So today's date of March 23rd, this is 1 year to the day exactly that we started what was at the time our journey for school closures and distance learning. And then we were able to transition, obviously, at the start of this school year to more in-person opportunities. But if you recall, it was Friday the 13th. That was the key date last year that everything was kind of shut down on the state end. Schools were closed. But at the time, then Governor Raimondo had announced that we would be moving up April break. So that took place the following week. So when we returned to open schools, if you will, on March 20th, that was Monday, March 23rd. And that is when we officially went into school closures and distance learning. So it's very noteworthy and that I'm able to make the announcement this evening that we are able to state that by Monday, April 26th, that'll be our return from April break, we will be able to provide full in-person opportunities for all grades. So, again, we have had full in-person opportunities 5 days per week for grades pre-K through 6, while 7 and 12 have been operating on a hybrid schedule that we have been trying to expand little by little. Over the past few weeks, staff at Portsmouth Middle School and Portsmouth High School have worked on final challenges and have started transitioning many students in these grades back. So we anticipate we will be fully transitioned by that return from April break. Of course, we will be keeping all other mitigation measures such as masking, additional cleaning protocols, symptom screening, and many others in full effect. So I did want to take this opportunity to thank all PSD staff members, students, and families for your cooperation throughout everything this pandemic has brought us and to the efforts that it has taken to be able to make this announcement this evening. For the remainder of this year, we do plan to offer full in-person, hybrid, and distance learning opportunities to make sure that families still have those options as we look to finish out the school year. But again, the big announcement is that by Monday, April 26th, we will have full in-person opportunities for every grade. So thank you.
Yay! So that's wonderful news. And now what about busing though?
So busing is definitely the last challenge. We've checked into, and as you can imagine, it's not so much going to be a challenge at the high school. So the high school, we've been working on other things like, sizes of some classrooms. Lunch is a much bigger deal at the high school. The middle school, again, it's been like two different things. It's not so much those things because they have much more space we're able to take advantage of. We're able at the middle school to have all students eat in their classrooms. But the one challenge for the middle school has been around busing. So as I've been kind of updating on this and talking about what, they've been trying to work on at both schools, that's what it's been. But the middle school believes that they'll be able to work through anything related to the current busing restrictions. And of course, with the new CDC guidance, we are anticipating changes to RIDO protocols as well. So maybe some changes to busing will also be coming out of that.
Mm-hmm.
That will only help.
Yeah, they mentioned something about maybe moving it up to 75%.
Right.
So
Yep.
that's great. Questions, comments, wild applause? Anybody? No? Okay. So moving on to teaching and learning. We have a really interesting presentation about RIDE assessment and STAR middle of year update. Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone thumbs up? All right, great. And great news about our return of our students. So good evening, everyone. Tonight, my teaching and learning presentation is going to provide us with an update on state assessments and also provide information on our middle of the year STAR assessment data. So this first slide is an update of RIDE state assessments. All state assessments, as Dr. Copeland and Dr. Kenworthy have both mentioned, are required to be in person. Each individual school has worked at developing schedules to accommodate our in-person and distance learners, and they're reaching out to all of our distance learning families with testing options. Our first state assessment was the access assessment for our English language learners. These assessments have been completed and delivered back to RIDE already. The RIDECast ELA assessment window will open on March 29th, followed by our math assessment window that'll open on April 12th. Our NGSA science assessment window opens April 26th. Dynamic learning maps alternate assessment opens on April 5th. Our high school has worked really hard to develop an SAT and PSAT schedule that accommodates all learners. In-person SAT for juniors and PSAT 10 for sophomores will be held on April 13th. This will be an asynchronous distance learning day for our freshmen and seniors. All schools are communicating their individual assessment schedules to all of our families. So that'll be coming out to families shortly. Okay. This first data slide is an overview of our fall reading data that I presented earlier this year. We had 46.9% of our students at or above proficiency in the area of reading, 35.5% on watch, 10.2% of our students needing that tier 2 intervention. And in the fall, we had 7.4% 4% of our students needing a tier 3 urgent intervention. So now looking at our winter data, despite our current teaching and learning circumstances, I am extremely proud to share that we are working towards closing our achievement gap. We now have 54.5% of our students at or above proficient in reading. That's an increase of 7.6%. Our on watch category has decreased by 4.5%. Our intervention tier 2 decreased by 1.6%, and our tier 3 urgent intervention decreased by 1.5%, bringing us to 5.9% of our students needing that targeted tier 3 intervention. We're inching our way closer to that 5% or lower target for urgent interventions. This slide just provides us with a fall to winter comparison visual of our reading data. This is the pattern of growth districts want to see and celebrate. We're increasing our students who are attaining proficiency or above proficiency levels, and then we're seeing a decrease in the number of students on watch and requiring urgent or in tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. So that's exactly the pattern that we would like to see. Okay, so now another just quick overview of our fall math data. We had 56.6% of our students at or above proficiency, 30.9% on watch, 8.6% of our students needing that tier 2 intervention, and 4% of our students needing the targeted tier 3 interventions. So similar to our reading outcomes, our winter screening indicates that we are working again towards closing that achievement gap in math as well. We now have 66% of our students at or above proficiency in math. That's an increase of 9.4%. Our on-watch category has decreased by 5.9%. Our tier 2 interventions decreased by 3.1%. And that targeted tier 3 urgent interventions has decreased by 0.5%, with only 3.5% of our students needing that targeted tier 3 intervention in mathematics. So that's great news. Again, here's that winter comparison now for mathematics. Again, we're seeing that spike in students who are at or above proficient, and that continued decrease in all of those intervention areas. So that's some good news to celebrate with that winter data. So now that we've reviewed our proficiencies, I wanted to take a moment and discuss another measure that we look at our schools, and that's our student growth percentiles, which we refer to as SGPs. So growth over time, it's an important factor in part of our MTSS framework and structure. It allows us as schools to capture and accurately interpret growth information on each of our students and make those informed data-based decisions regarding the extent to which the students are benefiting from our core curriculum instruction, and also how they're benefiting from their individual core interventions. In Rhode Island, SGPs between 40 and 60 are considered to be typical to moderate growth. So in the next two slides, we're going to just look at our school specifically. So reviewing those growth percentiles in reading by school, you can see that both of our elementary schools have what is considered to be high growth ratings, and both of our middle and high school have moderate growth ratings. These ratings indicate that our schools are providing students with a solid foundation in the area of reading and in our reading interventions. In the area of math, Melville achieved a high growth rating, with Hathaway, the middle and high school, having moderate growth ratings. Once again, all schools are considered to be providing students with that solid core instruction and necessary interventions to influence growth in the area of mathematics. I think that might have been my shortest teaching and learning update. That concludes that data review. I'm open to questions, and all of our school principals are on this evening as well, and they can further support any questions you may have about our specific schools. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions among school committee members? I see Mr. Ferber.
I don't have a question. I want to compliment the principals and the staff, because I was expecting very different results. So I was really pleasantly surprised. And because I know this had to be a very difficult year. So this is great. I mean, to me, it's pleasantly surprising.
Yeah, it's exciting. And now with the kids returning, I'll be excited to share that spring data as well.
Thank you. Mr. Piero?
I want to echo just what Mr. Ferber was saying, that this is basically, these numbers are short of a miracle, because I was expecting the absolute worst, just given how everything around us just kind of imploded. And Tom, thanks for reminding me that it was a year ago that we went to distance learning.
I know.
Here we go. It's only been the longest decade of my life. But I do want to go to slides 10 and 11, just to the bar. And I'm just trying to understand the way that they come to these calculations. Is it that the growth, just how do they get to this number?
How did I know you'd ask this question?
Because you know me in numbers. And
so here's what I'll tell you, Mr. Piero. It's a very complicated formula. And I actually linked an entire document on the backup to this presentation because I knew that there's understanding growth percentiles, and Mrs. McDade and I had had this conversation last year as well. There's metrics that are used so that they're standardized, and they're really looking specifically at like an individual student's growth at that moment of time during that school year compared to other students in the exact same grade at the exact same time. And then they create these metrics to have averages so that we can say, okay, well, the average growth expectancy for a student, for example, in kindergarten, that rate of growth would be quicker than the rate of growth of a student in, let's say, middle school, right? Because they're learning to read and they're excelling throughout benchmarks. So there's a full explanation on that backup.
thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. McDade, did you have a question?
Oh, I do. You know I do.
I love it.
Just to echo what Ms. Villeros was just saying, it's important to recognize that these are percentiles and not percentages.
Mhm.
So what that means is that, for instance, on the page that's up on the screen now, if Hathaway had whatever that is, a 68 was in the 68th percentile for growth, what that means is that in comparison to other schools that gave this particular test, our students had more improved more than 68 out of 100 of all the schools that all the elementary schools that took that test. So I'll just echo what everyone's been saying. This is quite an accomplishment, and we're really very appreciative of all the hard work. I had two questions. One, just as a reality check, do you know what the proficiency numbers were in winter of 2020, like a year ago before all this quarantine happened, how those compare to the numbers now?
I don't have them right now, but I can certainly get those for you. Yep.
Okay. I'm just
Yep.
curious if you had a sense of, where we are relative to a year ago. And then the other question is, it's based on the next slide. It's clear that Melville's growth was significantly higher than any of the other schools. Do you have any sense of why that would be? Is there something that they're doing, or was it just a quirky group of kids, or what do we have going on here?
Well, I can say that Melville started the MTSS journey and really developing those comprehensive interventions earlier than the other schools. They were the pioneers of that framework. And so I certainly think that there is some influence on the level of intervention being provided, and some of the expertise because of the training that they had gone through initially through MTSS RI. And so certainly that contributes to it. I feel that all of the schools are really working hard in the area of intervention. There is certainly noted high growth at Melville in the area of math, and that has been a strength for Melville in the past as well.
I know just from my years of teaching experience, teachers everywhere are working so hard to try and get that kind of result.
Yeah.
That when a group of teachers can do that, it's really helpful to know what difference that made. And it's just a really strong confirmation that the MTSS program is a good direction to go in, and it's doing what we're hoping that it'll do.
And I do think those targeted database-driven conversations that are being had, and again, Melville's been having those conversations, so it becomes much more comfortable for teachers to bring their data to the table and have those difficult, vulnerable conversations about what's working and what's not working, and how can we push our thinking and get us to that next level. And I certainly have been a part of those, being the principal there for many years. I was a part of those conversations, and now I'm fortunate enough to be a part of those conversations with all of the other schools. And I will say, and I appreciate everyone, and all of the positive comments, because I have to applaud the teachers and the administration, because we really have worked so hard in such difficult circumstances to try to, we believe in this work, and we believe in providing our students with these interventions, and the teachers have been at all levels, have really been working so hard, and they are committed to this. And I do believe that we will continue to see growth in all of our schools. So thank you to everyone, all of our teachers and administrators, for all your hard work.
Great, thank you. Mr. Shears.
Yeah. Question on the pie diagrams where the proficiency of both of them are either side of, let's say, 66, the green, and then the next to 25%. What is holding because if you put the greens and the blues together, you're up to around 90%. So my question is, what gets us those 25% into the green? What issues are holding it back from that being in that area?
So that's a great question. So if you can see that in the fall, we had 30.9% of our students in that on-watch category. And because both our intervention and urgent intervention decreased, that means that we swung students into that proficient level. So we are working towards that. Those are those cuspy students who may or may not end up being proficient on RICAS. So there's certainly a group of students that teachers, although they're not needing specialized interventions through our RTI process, there's students that are still being pulled possibly more frequently to have some small group instruction in the areas of need. And that's the work that we'll do. We ensure that they're getting some follow-up in areas that they may fall short on. And they're always, when we sit and have target team conversations, we have conversations about our on-watch students, because many times we may look at an assessment, that's just one, it's a glimpse of time. And we may say, okay, well, Johnny, he in on watch, but he's performing high and proficient in all areas. So this just might have been something about the assessment or you know, that day. But then we might see another student and say, okay, well, but you know, here Johnny is looking like he's on watch, but he is in need of an intervention. And we will then pull other data sources to confirm that and provide the intervention. So that's the process we take with that.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Ms. Kelly or Mr. Vadney, any questions? Okay, I do have two. So thanks for clarifying a little bit about the growth data, but in order to achieve that growth, you would have to have not only growth from urgent and intervention and on watch, but you'd also be the students who are already proficient, they're also performing better, right? So that's really just targeting all students learning.
Yes, and thank you for highlighting that, Dr. Copeland, because that's really important. When we sit and have those data meetings, we specifically look at that as well, because what we know is we want to ensure that all of our students are continuing to grow. So when we see a student who is performing at the 99th percentile already proficiency wise, we want to ensure that that growth is 40 or above, that they are continuing to make moderate growth throughout the year as well. So yes, we look at that, and these scores do represent that.
Great. And then my second question, and I don't know if you were able to do this, have you seen or are you able to track even students who are fully distant and those who are in class, and have you noticed differentiation in learning loss or growth? Is that something that we need to be thinking about for next year?
It's certainly something that we are looking at and having conversations. And what I can tell you is that it is similar to the start of the year, which is that it's pretty much the same. Our students are meeting their benchmarks, both our distance learners and our in-person students.
That's also good news.
Yeah.
I would have expected a less meeting of benchmarks fully virtual than not.
I mean, and again, it's just because it looks like it's been easy. It has not. This has been a journey. It has been extremely difficult. This has put a lot of pressure on our families and on our staff. And I was excited to share this data because I truly think it is a celebration. And yeah, so.
Great. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, everyone. I will go ahead and stop sharing.
Okay, moving on to approval of school committee minutes.
I move for the approval of first of the minutes of February 23rd as amended.
Second.
All right. I can see Ms. McDade because I'm on Zoom, but I think we're not sharing it. There we go. Okay. So do I have a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a first and a second. Calling the vote, Ms. McDade?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly? Aye. Mr. Ferber?
Aye.
Mr. Shears?
Aye.
Mr. Vadney?
Aye.
Mr. Payero?
Aye.
Emily Copeland? Aye, unanimous 7-0.
I move for the approval of the minutes of March 9th, both executive and regular school committee meetings.
Second.
Hearing any discussion, no amendments, calling the vote, Ms. McDade?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly? Aye. Mr. Ferber?
Aye.
Mr. Shears?
Aye.
Mr. Vadney?
Aye.
Payero?
Aye.
Emily Copeland? Aye. All right. Moving on to business. Can I have a motion for item A, please?
Did we do the exec from March 9th?
Yes.
Did you take them together?
We did
Yeah, sorry.
together. Mhm.
Fine, me.
I move a discussion and action of the post-prom donation of $1,000.
Second.
We have Ms. Budameyer joining us tonight from the post-prom committee. So, Mr. Costa, could you unmute Amy, please? And she can tell us about, we had a agenda item request to consider this donation, which we do every year. And Ms. Budameyer, do you want to tell us what all you have on tap for wonderful activities?
Yes. Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I will try to, anytime I talk about graduation or prom, I get very choked up. I get very emotional. So I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I start to cry. It's been a very emotional year. So the PHSO post-prom committee has been very hard at work since January. We are hopeful and optimistic that the class of 2021 is going to have a prom. So with that, a prom comes a post-prom. The post-prom has been held by the PHSO since 1997. It is because it's a high-risk night, we want to keep the kids as safe as possible. So with that being said, we are hopeful that they have a prom. We will have the post-prom. We are toying with other ideas as well. But right now, since some of the restrictions have relaxed, I know wedding venues and catering houses, their numbers went from 100 inside and 200 outside. So that's positive because I do believe we have 220, 225 in the senior class. So it's looking very promising. And I just had a meeting this evening. The option we're looking to have for the post-prom would be at the Glen Manor House like they had in 2019. Where we could have it, because you can have it outside the veranda as well as inside. So we get the best of both worlds. So that is plan A. Plan B, if we can't have a post-prom, we still want to celebrate the kids, we would look to do something very similar, but outside, like maybe at Glen Park, kind of in place of their senior class picnic, we would take it over. And then worst case scenario, if God forbid we go back a lot, we would look to possibly do what the class of 2020 is doing and do it a one-year reunion. But I know that is not what the kids want. They want something, they want to be celebrated, they want to be with each other. So our game plan is to host a post-prom hopefully at the Glen Manor House on June 9th. That's their prom date.
Yeah, I think everybody's hoping for the numbers to keep going down as the vaccinations go up. All right, Mr. Giro, this goes to an account at the high school. Is that what would happen? Or is it do we write it out to the high school post-prom committee?
We do, yep.
Yeah. The check would be made out to PHSO post-prom.
Okay, Mr. Ferber?
I'd like to make a motion that we increase this amount. This has been the same amount for the 8 years I've been on the school committee, and I'm sure for some years before that. And so it's been $1,000 every year. I mean, things aren't static over those years. So I recommend that we increase the amount
To what?
at least 1,500.
Yeah, okay, good. So that's your
You have
motion.
to make a motion.
Right, I make a motion that we increase it to 1,500.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion. We're going to vote on the amended motion first. Mr. Giro, this normally comes out of the school committee line item budget, correct?
Does,
Do we have 1,500 in that?
you do.
Okay, any other
Can we
questions?
go for 2,000?
Can I make it 3? Can I make it 3?
Okay.
Just-
Hearing
Just
no
so you
other-
know,
Mhm.
just one thing, just so I can let you know. So a typical post-prom, just so everybody is clear, runs anywhere between $12,000 to $14,000. It comes out to be about $45 to $50 per child that it attends. Because even if they don't go to the prom, they're still able to come to the post-prom. So that is what we're looking for. And now we're hosting a golf outing this year because certain fundraisers that we've normally done in the past, unfortunately, we cannot do them because of COVID reasons. And right now, golfing seems the safest sport that is out there. So that's how we're trying to raise the funds, and restaurant night. So everybody's taken a big hit this year, all the small businesses. So we're trying to get there one way or another. We've been moving in the right direction. So that $1,500 would be wonderful. But like I said, I'll be more than happy to take 3.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second approved on the floor for 1,500. Let's call the vote. Ms. McDade,
Aye.
Ms. Kelly. Mr. Ferber. We're voting on the amended motion, right? Mr. Shears.
Aye.
Mr. Vadney. Mr. Piero.
Aye.
Emily Copeland. Aye, unanimous. I think you're the first person who's gotten more money than they asked for with the school committee. Well
Thank
done.
you, thank you. You're gonna make me cry. Please don't make me cry. So thank you so much. I truly appreciate it, and I know the kids are going to love however they're celebrated, and we greatly appreciate it.
Well, we really appreciate, because I know it's a lot of work being done by the parents and supporters to really make it and the high school to really make it a special evening for the kids. And you know, especially with the last year and a half, right? They hopefully all have something really fun to look forward to.
Yes, and Joe's been wonderful too. I'm his new best friend.
Well, thank you, Mr. Amaral. All right.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Moving on to business item B, please.
I move for
Madam
discussion and
Chair,
action.
you didn't vote on the main motion. You just voted on the amendment.
Oh,
Right.
thank you. I forgot. Okay, so let's call the vote on the main motion to, okay. So call on the main motion, Ms. McDade,
Aye.
Ms. Kelly. Aye. Mr. Ferber.
Aye.
Mr. Shears.
Aye.
Mr. Vadney.
Aye.
Mr. Piero.
Aye.
Emily Copeland. Aye. Main motion approved. Okay, thank
Move for
you.
discussion.
Carol.
I move for discussion and action on the fiscal year 22 operating budget.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Superintendent Kenworthy.
Thank you. So we do have a presentation to share related to this item.
So this is not being shared on the Zoom.
If you go, Steve, definitely on the one that's on the school committee page on the website, it's there. School
I'll be right with
committee,
you, folks.
agendas. Go.
I see it. You want the business?
Oh,
Yep.
He's got it.
Yep, you got it now. Business item B.
Oh, wait a minute, we've got a chat before we get going here. Oh, you're welcome. Okay.
All right, we go to the first slide.
We do
All right.
present for it? All right.
Yeah, okay, the best we can there. So this evening, I am sharing with you, and it is on tonight as an action item. So you've seen two drafts so far on February 23rd and then March 9th of our operating budget proposal. And this evening, you are going to see what we are recommending as the final draft for your approval. And then also immediately following this item will be the final, will be asking for a vote for the facilities capital budget. So one way or another, whether hopefully you vote to approve both budgets as presented. But if there are amendments or we need to make changes, tomorrow there is actually a date in town charter that we need to get this over to the town side. We just like to make sure that we keep within all of those procedures. So we are fully prepared to make sure we transmit to the town side our approved operating budget and capital budget. And then, of course, later in April, there will be a presentation that we make with all other town departments to the town council seeking their final approval. And again, by charter, the final vote on the budget in Portsmouth takes place later in June. Again, with what you approve this evening, this will all be, we're gonna give it an abridged kind of version of this in the presentation this evening, but all of this information and the budget that you end up approving this evening and the approved capital budget will end up in a fully detailed budget book that goes to the town council and then will be online. So as we've been doing with the last few presentations, I'm just going to highlight a couple of items and then turn things over to Ms. Suggiero for the details. But as you recall, we started this process, the official school committee version of this process on February 23rd with the first draft. And that represented months already up to that point of hard work from many individuals within the school department to put together a budget that we
felt could support adequately the teaching and learning that needs to take place for next year. And at that point, what you saw on February 23rd, that first draft represented a 2.5% expenditure increase, which would require for that amount a 3.9% increase in the town appropriation. The highlights that I mentioned there for that presentation, of course, this is realizing where we are at currently with some uncertainty all in all budgets at both the state and local level. This was not a budget where we're asking for any major new initiatives. There are no FTE staffing, full staffing increases. We're just trying to maintain current staffing levels and initiatives, including any items that we added or personnel this year related to COVID are not addressed in this budget because most of those items were paid for with the special fund that we created or additional federal money that we received. And what was really driving at that time on February 23rd, that town appropriation number was the fact that we were seeing decreased revenue projections in all of the areas. And the main one for that is the state funding formula. And then even in our tuitions for Little Compton and out of district CTEs, again, just based on where we are this year, we would be projecting a loss from what we had budgeted last year. We did as much work as we could at that point, reclassifying certain items within our IDA budget after we determined that we could, kind of do a little better job of addressing some of those needs within our budget versus our IDA special grant. And then we had designated several high-cost items, including our one-to-one Chromebooks and math curriculum materials for next year to be purchased with other funds that would not be reflected in this operating budget here that you're going to see. As we moved into March 9th, again, on the direction of the school committee, we were asked to do as much additional work as we could, get those numbers down. So at our last meeting, you saw a budget that represented a 2.2% expenditure increase, and which would require a 3.3% town appropriation. The main ways that we were able to get at that was including some favorable updates that we received to categorical group home aid. And then we reduced as much as possible in all other areas other than personnel. And that, of course, leads us to this evening, where Ms. Sadira will get into the details around this budget that we're asking for a final approval on. And it represents a 1.8% overall expenditure increase, which, for a $40 million budget, we feel that we've held the line there as much as we could. And again, for several of those factors that we've already mentioned, that would require a 2.7% increase in the town appropriation over last year's approved budget. Some of the items that Mr. Sadira will get into more detail on, we were able to factor in, some favorable information that we received related to categorical high-cost special education funding. We added in a few more Little Compton tuitions. Again, that's a tricky area right now because we're having to look at current numbers. So anything we project beyond that, we would be, again, hoping that those numbers did hold true, but we did add in a couple of additional tuitions there. We did receive some favorable updates from the trust regarding health and dental rates. And then, and we knew this, any real movement from where we ended at the last meeting was going to require some adjustments to personnel. So this budget that you're going to see this evening does reflect the elimination of one instructional coaching position and the reduction of in our CTE area based on how we were trying to provide oversight to that department this year. We are going to, and I will present a more detailed explanation of this at our next school committee meeting. We are going to fold this into these responsibilities into some administrative restructuring that we're proposing based upon the vacancy that will be existing next year within the Portsmouth High School administrative team. I can report that with the instructional coaching elimination, no individual will lose their position related to that. We had two positions that ended up becoming vacant at the beginning of this school year, and I did give the direction that we were not going to fill those based on COVID uncertainty. So we have not filled those 2 vacant positions for instructional coaches. So there's no individual that will be affected there. With this overall CTE reduction, we're going to go back to the previous model we had. We will have a CTE department chairperson. So there will be some reduction related to overall teaching FTEs within that department, but we will be going back to a structure that we had in place prior to this year for a number of years that worked there for that department. And then another item that I wanted to highlight was that you will also see, this was a change from the last meeting. We also had to factor in about a $40,000 unanticipated increase. That is to support the second SRO position that we have. So that had been funded for the last few years through a grant that I was notified that the town did not receive an extension of that grant. As you know, we did a lot of work last year on our restructuring our safety and security personnel. So we weren't looking at doing any other restructuring or reductions in that area. So I really don't want to touch it if we don't have to. So we would keep the current structure of 2 SROs. That's 1 at the high school, 1 at the middle school. They also, the high school SRO spends as much time as they can at Hathaway. The middle school SRO at Melville, that worked really well for us. We have 2 additional security officers that are district employees that are there full time at both elementary schools. So again, I would like to maintain that current structure. That $40,000 that we contribute for each SRO is roughly about half of the total cost for those positions. So again, I think what you will see this evening, we feel like supports and meets the goals of what we need to have in place to support our students in our teaching and learning for next year. So, Mr. Diarra, I will let you take the next few slides.
Okay, thank you. So Dr. Kenworthy did a pretty good job of giving you all the details, so I'll just kind of highlight. I don't want to be redundant.
In case I missed anything.
So on the revenue walk forward page, you can see the progression that he outlined from meeting to meeting, and certainly this being the last meeting that we were hoping for an action and approval. There were 4 adjustments to revenues, as he mentioned. We had we did get the governor's recommendation for state aid did come out. There was a slight reduction in our group home aid number. But if you remember, it went up quite a bit in our last meeting. So net, it's up about $100,000. The high cost special education categorical aid recommendation from the governor did come out. That was up about $29,000 versus our original assumption. We also did tweak our little Compton tuition assumption and added 2 additional tuitions. And that all of those combined with the expenditure reductions allowed us to reduce the town appropriation by about $215,000. That gets us to the bottom line that we're recommending, which is, if you look off to the right, is a 1.8% total increase in revenues year over year, which is supported by a 2.7% town appropriation increase. Go to the next page. I'll walk through the expenditures. Thank you. Again, here we go, meeting to meeting. So the first line was the reduction in regular salaries related to the instructional coach of about $68,000. Professional days were required to apportion a piece of those salaries to professional days that are embedded in the school year. So that's just related to that adjustment as well. Dr. Kenworthy mentioned the adjustment we were making to the supervision of the CTE programs. So that was $33.7 thousand. Lines 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9, and 10 are related to those personnel adjustments, and also include better assumptions around both our health and dental premium increases. We had been assuming an 8% increase on health. That's now looking more like around a 6%. And dental, we had been told was about 5% from the trust, and now we're being told it should be about 0 to maybe slightly down. And we do coordinate those assumptions with the town. So the town is making those same adjustments as we are. And then in other services, as Dr. Kenworthy mentioned, we did add in $40,000 as an increase to our budget to support that second SRO. So again, we have 1.8% year-over-year increase in expenditures for next year's budget proposal. If you could flip to the last page. Nice. Yeah, keep going. Perfect. Thank you. So what this is a new schedule you haven't seen yet this year. It was in last year's budget. You probably remember at our town budget meetings. This schedule is all of our funds that we're budgeting. So this includes not only the unrestricted general fund, which is what we've been talking about for the last several meetings, but also our restricted or really mostly our federal grant funds as well. So while we have a budget proposal of $41,269,026 or 1.8% increase in our general fund, we do not want to lose sight of the fact that we do have about $1,913,125 of additional federal grants and other restricted funds that we will be submitting to the town to fully disclose our budget. Are there any questions on any of the details on any of the schedules?
Let me look at, I don't see Karen McDade raising her hands. Committee members? No, I don't see any questions here. It's very well explained. Other comments? Okay, I think I would just like to really point out to the Portsmouth community, I think the school district has done an exceptional job at holding spending to 1.8%. I mean, when you think of personnel, benefits, all the things that go into running the schools, to be able to have kept it to 1.8%, I think is, or actually, yeah, 1.8% is really amazing. And I think there was a comment made by the superintendent or Mr. Euro at the very beginning of this. It's not a spending problem that is really challenging Portsmouth right now. It's more of a revenue problem in terms of this $169,000 loss from state aid that we weren't expecting. I think that's why we're having to ask the town for more than what is reflected in our spending to a large degree. So I would just applaud. I know it's not easy. We're not adding new programs and we're not doing new initiatives, but I think it's a tight year and you guys have done a really excellent job at holding down costs for the town. And it's a budget I would certainly support because I think while we don't, expand new programs, we're clearly not going to be harming our existing programs. Any other comments? So Dr. Kenworthy, you would like this to be approved tonight?
Yes,
right.
again, with your approval, this will be the budget request for our operating budget that we will be submitting to the town.
So seeing no further questions, comments, or discussions, I'll call the vote. Ms. McDade?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly? Aye. Mr. Ferber?
Aye.
Mr. Shears?
Aye.
Mr. Vadney?
Aye.
Mr. Piero?
Aye.
Emily Copeland? Aye. Unanimous, 7-0. And thank you all for your hard work. I know it's several months of effort involving everybody, so awesome.
Move for discussion and action on the fiscal year 22 capital budget.
Second.
Yes. All right. Superintendent Kensler.
Thank you, Dr. Copeland. So again, the other key piece here, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that Mr. Shears had pointed out, we have 5 buildings, 4 school buildings and a school administration building that we do maintain, both for the town and to support our educational services. So for the regular upkeep and needs of those buildings, that is what we usually refer to when we're talking about our capital budget. There is plenty of money that we put in these areas on the school side. But again, there is additional funds that we have to request each year from the town. So what we're seeking approval on this evening is the capital request that you will see. Overall, it is a net ask from the town to support our capital needs of $469,000. I am going to again let Mr. Duro get into the finer details here, this will help us to both complete needed projects within the district, but also maintain a required spending amount that we do need to according to regulations from the Department of Education. So, Mr. Duro.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Shears did touch on this earlier in his opening remarks from the subcommittee, but we are required by law to hit certain maintenance thresholds. There are 3 different ways to do that. One is a % of operating budget, one is a % of replacement value, and one is a straight $3 per square foot subject to inflation. For us, for Portsmouth, for FY22, 2.5% of our operating budget is the lowest amount that would meet the threshold. If you want to maybe go down a little bit to the next page. Yeah, right there. So at 2.5% of our operating budget, that means we need to spend about a little over $1.1 million to maintain, hit our thresholds as required by law. Now, there are a lot of things that count towards that goal, not just capital expenditures that we get budgeted from the town. So, for example, projects that we've completed in the past that the town has issued bonds for, well, the interest payments that are made next year, they count. So that's a little under $100,000. Maintenance employees that are dedicated full-time to maintaining our facilities. We have 3 of them. This would not include custodial support at all. This is just maintenance. That's about $290,000, including all benefits. Our regular maintenance expenditures, so our operating budget you just approved, includes $270,000 of various maintenance and repair expense lines. We do have the $200,000 in capital approved by the town last year for our new phone system. We'll be spending that over the summer, so that will count. And then the Hathaway outdoor classroom that's currently out to bid for about $50,000. So that leaves us short about $240,000 roughly. So we have to make that up somehow. And the way we always typically make that up is through capital projects. What we're proposing for next year is a little over 19,000 square feet of roofing at the high school that is in need of repair. That is projected to be a gross budget of $528,000. We did a high school roofing project this past summer. It was actually the last project on our last approved 5-year capital plan from RIDE. So that plan is now complete. We were able to come in under budget on that project by $59,000. You may recall when we talked about that several months ago, that was we saw the most bidders on any project since I've been here at that point. So we got a very sharp price on that. So we can use that $59,000 to offset the total cost. We only need a new budget from the town of $469,000. I do want to disclose that this project, we need to do this work. 1, because we need to replace the roofs, but 2, because we do need to make sure we meet our maintenance requirements. But this project does not qualify for housing aid. Our current stage 2, as you know, is in process. We're a year out from when we initially began because of a number of reasons, not the least of which is COVID. So our last 5-year plan is completely closed out. We've completed our last project. So this one will not be housing aid eligible, but needs to be done for many reasons. So that's why we're proposing that project for next year. And then if you want to go maybe to right there, just to get a visual, top right-hand section outlined in red, areas A, C, and D. That's about 19,200 square feet. As you can see, that's the library, art suite, I think the TV production as well. So that's the area if you'd like to see a visual of what we're proposing. Are there any questions on the capital budget request for next year?
Ms. McNope, seeing no questions. I think it's already gone through 2 subcommittees, so you've educated about half of us already here.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing no further questions, ready to call the vote. Ms. McDade?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly? Aye. Mr. Ferber?
Aye.
Mr. Shear?
Aye.
Mr. Badney?
Aye.
Mr. Piero?
Aye.
Emily Copeland? Aye. Approved 7-0. Thank you very much. Can I have a motion for business item D, please?
So I move for discussion and action, authorization of school department attorney to negotiate a 1-year extension to the Little Compton tuition agreement.
Second.
Okay. Do you want me to start this off? You want to start?
I can start and
Okay.
then
Superintendent
certainly
Kenworthy?
if you wanted to expand upon it or
Mhm.
anything else. So I am asking for your approval of this agenda item to authorize our school department attorney to negotiate a 1-year extension to the Little Compton tuition agreement. So our current tuition agreement with Little Compton will expire at the end of next school year, the 2021-22 school year. I was approached through the Little Compton superintendent, probably started these discussions in the fall about the possibility of extending this agreement. They wanted a little bit of time to decide what they wanted to do with any long-term future agreement. So we have had discussions on our end about items that we would like to see in any sort of extension agreement. I have made the Little Compton superintendent fully aware of those. I believe she has passed those on to the school committee. At the March 10th Little Compton School Committee meeting, they did approve an agenda item that would allow the extension for 1 year of the current tuition agreement not to exceed an amount of $13,500 per pupil. So again, I am asking the committee this evening to allow our school department attorney to begin those negotiations.
Okay. And I think it's important that we make clear kind of the parameters of what that agreement would entail if we were to enter into that agreement. So next year is the last full year of the existing contract, and this would be for the 22-23 school year, correct?
Correct.
And I believe Attorney Carroll is on the call. Yes, I see her there.
Yes.
So with this agreement ending in the 21-22 year, I'm getting my years mixed up, 21-22 school year, you would be negotiating a 1-year extension? Would you be negotiating a 2-year agreement?
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what I would propose is that we negotiate a 1-year extension to the present contract with Little Compton. And basically in that extension, put down the issues that we want going forward for the last year, for the extended year, which is 22 or 23. Now, I know the superintendent has spoken to me on a few occasions and explained to me some of the items that he wants in that proposal. Dr. Kenworthy, do you want to go over those items right now so that it's clear to everybody on the committee what it is you're looking for in an extension?
Sure. So based on conversations, again, with our committee, I was trying to represent the items that I thought at a minimum would need to be included in those discussions. And those would be that for next school year, we were looking for a guarantee of at least 100 students. And again, with the current provisions of Little Compton providing their own transportation and paying for any out-of-district special education costs, we would agree to kind of keep the rate at the tuition rate that is agreed to in the current agreement. But again, looking for that minimum of 100 students, and then anything over those 100 students, Little Compton would pay as they currently do per pupil for those students.
Then for the following school year, which Little Compton is seeking the extension for, we would be requesting a tuition rate of $13,500, just at a per pupil rate, with the same provisions of Little Compton providing their own transportation and assuming all out-of-district special education costs. Again, I believe it is the desire of this committee that that agreement would end one way or another at the end of the 2022-23 school year. Any future long-term agreement would then have to be negotiated. And then there's the question of if it was a long-term agreement was not renewed, what would the rate be for students who were going to stay from Little Compton beyond the 22-23 school year?
Okay. So let me summarize. And I think what we're if I understand it correctly, we are voting to authorize the Portsmouth School Department attorney to negotiate this one-year extension with the following conditions based on what I've heard, and then open it up to comment if anybody wants to add anything here. First, for the academic year of 2021-22, there would be a guaranteed minimum of 100 students, which they probably have anyway, at the projected contract rate of $10,471. They continue to provide their own transportation and their own special ed according to the existing contract. For the 22-23 year, it would be a transitional tuition rate of $13,500 per student. And they would pay any additional special ed costs, other special ed costs, transportation, et cetera. And then I think what would have to be very clear for me, at least personally, in that agreement, is that going forward after the 2023 year, that Little Compton would pay the Newport County rate, whatever our agreed upon tuition rate is, unless there was some other negotiated agreement, but that this would sort of conclude the existing contract. So we would have clarity on what would happen after the 2023 school year. Those are the conditions that I've heard. Does anybody else? And I think, and then I guess that's up to you to come up with the language.
Right.
And then, that would go back to the superintendent and their superintendent, correct?
Well, I would have to negotiate it with their school department attorney.
Okay.
Right.
Mr. Shears.
I just, in your comments and also the superintendent, you mentioned the guarantee of the 100 students for the first year as we're talking, but the second year, the transition, I don't know whether you omitted that or if that wasn't going to be part of it, of having also, again, that minimum of 100 students.
I think that was then just the idea that would be on if they had 100, they'd pay 100. If they have 110, they'd pay 110. It was whatever.
But if they had less, then they would pay
They
less.
would pay less, but the higher.
As long
the
as they're agreeing to
transitional rate.
the transitional tuition rate.
Right. Okay, so Attorney Carroll, were you clear on those conditions?
Yes, I'm clear. I just need authorization from the committee to
All right,
move forward.
So we'll call the vote and see if we have authorization here. Ms. McDade?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly? Aye. Mr. Ferber?
No, no.
Mr. Shears?
No,
Mr. Vadney?
Yes.
3-2. Mr. Piero?
Yes.
Aye. Emily Copeland, aye. So you have authorization with a vote of 5-2.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion for business item E, please?
I move for discussion and action on the budget transfer. If a budget transfer is greater than 5,000.
second,
Sure.
Want me to take that one, Dr. Kenworthy?
I can start. Again, you can fill in anything that I leave out. Are you good with me?
Yep.
Dr. Copeland? Okay. Thank you. So by policy, we do have to bring any budget transfer over $5,000 to the committee for approval that we're looking to make. But we definitely wanted to bring this one tonight because it relates to the discussions we've been having on the budget. So as I mentioned, one of the high cost items that we pulled out from the beginning of the budget drafts that you've seen is related to our one-to-one Chromebooks. Just a kind of reiteration there. We have a lot of technology needs that are met through our technology capital budget, which you've already approved. But any items, devices that students use for one-to-one, so the devices that students take to and from school with them, which now, as you know, particularly due to the pandemic, we are fully one-to-one in grades K through 12. So what we do is provide those devices for students when they start at a particular grade level in a building, but then, through wear and tear and just kind of, natural upgrades that need to be made, we refresh at those key transitional years so that the students who receive new devices are going forward now with our full one-to-one program will be students in kindergarten, grade 5, and grade 9. And so this amount that we are requesting the budget transfer for this evening will help us to purchase, we'll be looking to purchase those one-to-one Chromebooks. We had felt early on with our initial budget discussions that we had a couple of key areas that we would be able to move money from this year. Again, that's helped us keep this total cost out of the operating budget that you just approved. So Mr. Dioro, if I've left any key information out there, feel free.
Nope, that's everything. I'll just go over the numbers. So to fund the 530 Chromebooks, we need $163,500. We're proposing to transfer from professional development days $100,000. As you know, we budgeted for incrementally paid PD days, but they were actually embedded in the school calendar this year. Also $63,500 from salaries related to an unfilled instructional coach position that was budgeted but never filled. We transfer that to technology related hardware to make that purchase.
Okay, questions? Seeing, oops, sorry, I have to make sure I didn't miss my date. Seeing no questions, calling the vote. Ms. McDade?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly?
Aye.
Mr. Ferber?
Aye.
Mr. Shears?
Aye.
Mr. Vadney,
Aye.
Mr. Piero?
Aye.
Emily Copeland? Aye, unanimous, 7-0. Can I have a motion for business item F, please?
For discussion and action on the school bus transportation bid award.
Second.
Administration? I don't know which
Sure,
one's gonna do it here.
Again, I'm going to turn over the finer details, Mr. Dioro. I will just mention, as everyone is aware, our transportation contract, which is major contract that any district has, was actually expiring at the end of last year. You did authorize us, Mr. Dioro, negotiated a great one-year extension of that agreement with First Student. But that was expiring at the end of this year. So we did go out to bid for a new contract, and Mr. Dioro has a recommendation for who we would like to award that contract to.
Yes, thank you. So so as some history, you may remember, we went out to bid last year. Given COVID, given the concerns around getting competitive bidders, we did withdraw that RFP, negotiated one-year extension. So our 5-year agreement ended last year. This is our 6th year. We went out to bid again. We did have a lot of interest. We did get 2 bids. First Student is the current provider, and then Durham School Services also submitted a bid. We opened those on February 23rd, and based on those proposals and the costs contained in there, I'm recommending that we award the contract for the 5-year period beginning 7/1/21 to First Student Inc. Based on their bid being the lowest responsible and responsive bid.
Okay, thank you. Questions? I mean, in the proposal, they talked about an alternate, but it sounded like we were getting older buses. So that's why that was rejected, right?
Yes, it was pretty clear to me based on our conversations over the years that one of the things we definitely wanted out of this new contract was newer buses, and that alternate proposal had buses no younger than 8 years old, which I didn't think was reasonable.
Does the first student proposal, I remember there was an issue because when we extended it a year, some of those buses ended up being older than 10 years, which had been the cutoff in the previous contract. And is that now remedied in the new proposal?
Yes, the new proposal, buses can be no older than 5 years to start the contract and no older than 10 to end the contract.
I think that will help with some of the reliability issues.
Absolutely.
And then my other question was, we're able to, once we hear the recommendations from this transportation assessment, we can modify, some of the routes and some of the buses as needed if we see fit.
If we're able to do that and save on the number of buses we need, we can do that as part of this contract.
And you did, as you know, you did authorize us to use a consultant who is currently reviewing data and going to make some recommendations for us in those areas.
Other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, call the vote. Ms. McDade?
Aye.
Ms. Kelly? Aye. Mr. Ferber?
Aye.
Mr. Shears?
Aye.
Mr. Vadney,
Aye.
Mr. Piero?
Aye.
Emily Copeland, aye, unanimous, 7-0. Ms. McDade, can I turn the last four over to you for the policies?
Sure. First, I'd like to move for discussion and action on the food allergies special dietary needs policy, which is EFAB.
Second.
Go ahead. You got it.
Dr. Caldwell, do you want to talk about this? This is a policy that we discussed in our last subcommittee meeting that has to do with, as the title suggests, administration of medications and treatments of allergies and other dietary issues.
Sure. So this policy was a policy that was in existence. So it essentially was a renewal to reflect any updates to any regulations governing severe allergy. We went in and we, edited some of the language that was used to try to make it clearer, along with definitions and, procedures around how the school district would respond with ensuring that, students are kept safe, along with the use of an epinephrine injector for students with severe allergies who may carry, and required training of all staff that takes place annually.
So most of this comes from Rhode Island state law, right? Not federal. This is more state driven, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Piero?
Yeah, it's just more of a matter of like parliamentary procedure. Is this a second read or a final read?
It's a second read because the first read is usually the committee.
In the committee.
That's the first time we as a whole, the subcommittee. It's the first time we as a whole committee are seeing it.
All right, I'll typically take your final vote at the next meeting. We'll make any changes that you recommend this evening to any of these policies. Then you'll see.
So it's a matter of discussion or a matter of action? Then?
Correct.
Okay, just because it says discussion and action on the agenda for all items.
Yeah, it should be discussion.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, yep, we're on the
We'll
opposite.
see these next meeting for a
Yeah.
final vote one way or another.
Any comments on the policy?
No,
Okay.
looks great.
All right. Not hearing, it seems very technical to me, so that's why I thought it was probably just complying with state law.
Yes.
All right, so thank you for that. Let's move to business item H, please.
I move for discussion of naming the school facilities policy FF.
Have a second?
Second.
I have 3 seconds. Take your choice. Go ahead.
So this policy, as well as the next two, were policies that had very minimal changes, where we were basically bringing it into alignment with the new way that the policies are organized. So this first one has to do with naming of buildings or other facilities and what the guidelines are for that.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Dr. Kenworthy? Anything else we need to?
No, as Mrs. McDade mentioned, the next three were, I think we mentioned this at the last meeting in her policy subcommittee update, the last of old policies that don't require major changes. We have other old policies we'll be bringing forward, but they are going to require some more extensive review.
Yeah. No, we used this one when we were talking about the auditorium. Last. Yes, Mr. Ferber.
I have a question about that, specifically something like the auditorium. So the auditorium is known as the new gym. So somebody,
No, the auditorium's the.
I didn't mean the
theater.
auditorium, I mean the gym.
Yeah.
So so if we had a benefactor that wanted to donate, what dollar figure do we consider worthy of that sort of name recognition?
Well, it says actually here that the person has made an outstanding
Yeah,
contribution.
right, I understand.
Outstanding.
I think it's purposely left a little,
That might be monetary, or that might be, in education, so.
No, I'm just imagining, there's like we almost had an issue with, forgetting his name, we've got the athletic field.
Yeah.
Remember, everything is.
Yeah, the coach.
Well, I think,
No,
Mr. Radley?
no, I just kind of think that outstanding performance, we could name the football field after Fred.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, if my outstanding performance as a school committee member,
Yes, that's right.
yeah.
might be,
Yeah, but
That's
you
why
have
we
to find a
reserved the name
committee that
last
was
time.
wanting to push it. Are you suggesting a change, or are we just kind of
suggesting
thinking?
an addition, some sort of a definition as to what realm of dollar amount constitutes.
I wasn't actually thinking it would.
Dollar.
Yeah, we're not.
Seven figures is outstanding.
There might be an individual who wants to contribute some significant amount of money, as
Yeah.
formerly with the athletic field.
7 has a ring to it. 0.
Well, going with the,
I think that it should be left purposely ambiguous.
Yeah, I think that the intention here is that that a financial donation would not be the only reason to honor someone.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of
Considered, but we would then go back. to the
But it's right up there.
Right. But I like your thinking, Mr. Ferrer.
That could solve our revenue issue.
Yeah.
Okay, well, as this is the first full read of the committee, I'm hearing more. Would you like to make a motion to change it? I'm hearing more support for ambiguity, I think.
So I should vote for ambiguity.
No, I'm just saying, we're not voting tonight, we're just talking.
Yeah. Who's
That it's kind of, I like the idea that it allows you to make, a reference different types of contributions. So,
right.
okay, good comments, others? All right, business item I.
I move for a discussion of the school committee member conduct policy, which is BC.
Second.
So again, this is a policy that has not changed significantly. And outlines our appropriate behavior.
Yeah.
It was just the next policy that was ready. Don't read anything
Yeah,
into
all right,
this.
No.
it's already-
No.
I'm going to be quiet.
Yep. All right, I'm hearing no objections to ethical behavior, which is good. Next.
wow, within limits.
All right. And then finally, I move for discussion on the committee member code of ethics and conflict of interest policy, which is BCAB.
Second.
Again, is this mainly a continuation and an update of naming of
Correct. I don't think
numbering?
Yes.
there were any changes recommended. Carol has reviewed the legal references.
Okay. These have been officially read for the second time then. Next meeting, we'll have our final and action. So we will be adjourning our public session and returning to executive session. Before we do so, I'd just like to note that our next meeting is April 13th. And then there will be a town and school budget meeting somewhere in there toward the end of the month. But we hope that you'll all stay tuned to support the schools. All right, with that being said, can I have a motion for adjournment? please?
Second.
No.
No.
Adjourn to
No,
executive.
no, you're going into executive session.
Motion, I have to read the executive session thing again.
So I move that we go into executive session, according to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5, sections 8(2), sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, or work sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation.
Second.
No, I haven't finished yet.
Oh, go ahead. Hurry up.
You know, there we get it.
Two, sessions exclusively for the purposes of reviewing other matters which relate to the privacy of students and their records.
Second.
Calling the vote, Ms. McDade,
Aye.
Ms. Kelly. Aye. Ms. Gerber.
Aye.
Ms. Shear.
Aye.
Mr. Radney.
Aye.
Ms. Piera.
Aye.
Emily Copeland, aye, unanimous 7-0. We're now going back into executive session. Thank you all very much for
Thank you.
coming,
Thank you.
and we'll see you